What's up, guys? Welcome back to Alchemy Online. This week we are clearly building some ramps, and it has been a long time coming. Our buddy Ryan Spence got some templates for us, and so we've talked about it forever. Today is the day we are putting in a wall ride feature. If you're new to building ramps, you can take a look back at some of our other videos. We go over all the basics. This week we're specifically looking at how we're gonna seam our face plies into our deck and get a nice smooth wall ride. So we're getting ready to put our first layer of plywood down. We're using a 3/8 inch ply. It's gotta be thin enough to bend, but not so thin you're gonna punch a hole in it. And what we're thinking about right now is we've got two seams we wanna be aware of. So the top seam is where we're gonna attach it to our rib. We're gonna split the difference so that there's a support behind both pieces of plywood as they come together so we don't have any soft spots. The other seams we want to think about, because this is a wall ride, we're not going to have metal transition at the bottom. This is going to be seamed into our whole deck. We've got to remember that our second sheet of plywood should be about 2 inches, 1.5 inches longer. So the bottom seam, we want to make sure that both layers of our plywood are resting on the floor, and that's going to help make it as smooth as possible when we put our skate light over so that we won't even know there's a ramp underneath the surface. Next up, we're gonna use our chalk line so we can mark exactly where our ribs are because we want these top sheets to be snug to our form. So line them up, follow the line, it's gonna work just fine. So now we're gonna measure. We don't need to use a whole 4x8 sheet of plywood up here. So what we're checking for is, as this plywood sucks into the ramp, how far up do I need to go to, again, get the edge of this plywood laying flat against the wall? If it's sucked all the way in, it looks like about 2 feet will do it. So we're gonna go ahead and rip this guy in half, which is gonna give us our 2-foot section for this layer. And of course, we're doubling up our layers, so the other half is gonna be our 2-foot for the second layer. So when you're working with a really tight radius and that plywood is gonna need to bend a lot, what we recommend doing is get those screws started, start to suck the plywood in all the way down the sheet, go back in and suck them all down all the way. Because it's such a tight radius, our plywood can crack if you try to get it super tight on one end. So again, loosely tack it all the way along and then go back and make sure that that plywood is sitting flush against your template. Otherwise, it can get loose, wiggle, soft spots, all kinds of problems. We really want to make sure that each of these sheets is really tight to the form, and that way the ramp's going to last a lot longer. So we got our first layer all installed, ready to go, and we're going to do basically the same process all over again for our second layer. The one thing you want to look out for or plan for is you're gonna end up with some weak points if you line the seams up in the same spot. So we're gonna actually flip our pattern. Rather than doing a 4-foot at the bottom and 2-foot at the top, we're gonna use our 2-foot at the bottom, and we're gonna cheat it all the way over that way, and our 4-foot at the top. So our seam right here is gonna get covered up with our second layer. It's gonna make a slightly stronger ramp that should last a whole lot longer. I wanna show you guys something. Since this isn't a traditional ramp with a metal transition at the bottom, we have to be a little more careful with how we're gonna seam this into the deck. So if you notice down here, our second sheet of thin plywood is overlapping the first. If they were to be flush, we would create far too much of a lip for our skate light to span. It would likely crack. So instead, we overshoot our second layer so that our skate light only has to go up over one small layer of plywood, preventing cracks, making a much smoother ramp. My plywood was too expensive and it's wrong. But skate light is strong. It will fix my mistakes and I'll sing about it in a song. Now that we've got our 2 layers on, it's time to throw the skate light down. Lucky for us, this is the piece of skate light we previously had mounted to the deck, so it's already pilot holed and routed for us. But Just a reminder, if you guys are using Skatelite, make sure you use pilot holes and countersink them, otherwise you can chip the material out. It's a little bit time consuming, but you get a beautiful finish and a long lasting surface. So we're gonna go ahead using the existing holes, get all of this Skatelite down, and then add our final Skatelite up into the wall, and maybe we'll see how it rides. Well, that is apparently how to build a wall ride. I can say now, after a little bit of R&D, it's super fun. 10 out of 10 would recommend. If you have the space, put a wall ride in. There's definitely some things I would change if I was going to do it again, and lucky for me, I basically live here. So I'm gonna keep tweaking it, playing around with it, making it a little bit better, but it is good enough for now. It is tons of fun. It'll give you a whole lot of speed. And so we'll see you next time. Until then, keep skateboarding, keep having fun. We'll see you later.